Hello and welcome to the Experiencing Love podcast. I'm your host, Philip Jocks, and I'm so glad that you're here. It honestly feels like it's been forever since the last time I recorded. I know it was just yesterday, and quite literally like 24 hours ago, but for some reason, recording yesterday morning and then experiencing a whole day and a whole night and coming back to recording again in the morning, it just feels like so much has happened since then. Maybe the truth is that a lot did happen since yesterday. Whatever the case may be, I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad to be back with you. I'm glad to have you here, and I'm just glad to be here, like here in life, where I am. Before starting my day truly, I was eating breakfast and drinking a cup of tea, and there was something just so peaceful about it. Nothing was going on around me, and I could just be right there, appreciating the present moment. Then I came upstairs and I did my ritual to get into the workflow. I'd never just jump right into this podcast. There's usually some form of preparation that I do. And lately it's been my priming and my meditation in the morning. I've talked about this recently, that I'll do some breath work and then read my poster that has pretty much the person that I am, the person that I'm becoming on paper. And I read that every single day as a reminder of who do I get to show up as today. Since discovering how much of a role my lover plays in this podcast, I also feel a deepened connection to recording. I feel as though I've unlocked some part of myself that felt a little bit cloudy before. I knew these parts of me existed, but I guess I never really thought about what parts of me are most present in the different areas of my life. I was given this idea not long ago by a friend of mine saying he has this binder for what he calls his different personalities or his different versions of himself. And what he does is he becomes super clear and specific on the version of himself that he needs to be in order to perform in a certain area of his life. And I thought that was so interesting, and I just had to learn more. And he explained it like this: you're not going to be the same person in your marriage or in your relationship as you would be at the gym. At the gym, you may be focused and determined and driven, whereas in your relationships, you might be more open and playful and compassionate and caring. You may have a different version of yourself at work, depending on what you do for work. You may have a different version of yourself at church if you go to church. I just got a little real world distracted and semi-lost my train of thought, but I know I was just talking about the different versions of myself and the bind of personalities that my friend has. And all I know is this, that I want to really figure out which version of myself shows up in which areas. I've learned that in this podcast, my lover comes up. And when I'm truly speaking from the heart, it's coming from my lover. My lover speaks to you with the guidance of my king and my magician and my warrior. But the core is the lover right here. And because of that, I do the priming and the meditation to get me into my lover, to embrace it and to amplify it. That's why I feel so much more connected with what I'm doing right now. And I know that after this, when I go on to do some other form of work, it may not be my lover that needs to show up. It may be my warrior. And if it's my warrior, I need to prime him in the same way. It would be a different ritual, but it would give me the result of getting me into the mind state and the body state of who my warrior is. It would tap me into that part of me. And I think that's a skill set that I never quite knew existed until about last year. And then I didn't really quite think about it until very recently. You know, I've heard about these things of like power poses and getting into state. And I've been doing that in a general sense of, oh, if I'm feeling a certain emotion that I don't want to feel, I know how to change it in a heartbeat. I let myself feel some emotion for 90 seconds to give it space, to show that emotion and that part of me that I see that it exists, and to know that I acknowledge it and say, thank you for being here, and I'm going to do something different now. And I choose to feel something different. It's the 90-second rule of I could feel whatever I'm feeling, and then I need to get myself in a state to get me out of those feelings. But I never quite did it in that way of, okay, what's the state I need to create? What's the energy? What's the archetype that I need to tap into? That's important. It's important to be clear on not just where I am, but where I'm going. I've been talking about that before. And honestly, the thing I'm talking about now, or the things I'm talking about now, is more so a revelation for myself. I know that when it comes to me doing the back end of business work, I need to be in my warrior. I need to put my head down, I need to focus, and I need to go for a greater cause. I have to do things that take a lot of discipline for me to push through because I don't want to do them. They're either boring or tedious and they suck, whatever it is. And I know that I need to do those things. And I guess a part of me is just curious, in what areas of my life do the king and the magician show up? And when they do, and if they do, where can they show up more? Part of getting that feeling of fulfillment is having access to all 4 states and practicing all 4 states, or all 4 archetypes. Part of feeling fulfillment is meeting all of your needs, all 6 of them. This is truly fascinating to me. God, I love to be here. I am so fortunate for the life that I've been given. Every challenge that I've had, every bad experience, none of it holds emotion anymore. I feel almost this detachment from it. From reading and learning about these archetypes, I learned that that's a trait of the warrior. The warrior is able to detach itself from those types of emotional experiences. I know that in those moments I felt those emotions. It existed. But the detachment is that I don't feel them anymore. I can think of a memory, I could think of an experience and not return to the emotion. I can view it from gratitude. It's almost like putting this protective shield over me while I look at my past. And I use that same shield when I look at my future, because it's easy to be fearful about the future when you don't know what's coming next. But as I've said before, fear and faith are both a part of the imagination. Fear is just the imagination undirected. Faith is that having purpose in your future, having that belief that you're going to be okay and you're going to figure it out. And I've said before that I just choose to have faith in my future. I wonder how different this podcast would sound if I tapped into a different archetype. I wonder what it would sound like if instead of the focus being love, it was one of the other focuses of the other archetypes. But honestly, I think I answered the question in my head as I was just asking it. And it might not actually be that different, because to give an analogy, it's like the lover may be the host, but the king and the magician and the warrior, they're part of the production crew. They're in the background helping just as much as the host to create the show, to create who I am. Because I think the lover reminds me to get into that mode of compassion, to get into my heart instead of my head. Yet much of what I say is guided by the king's direction, speaking about this connection to a higher purpose. You know, the warrior right now, it's all about devotion to a greater cause. In a way, the king connects me to this higher purpose, whereas the warrior keeps me devoted to that higher purpose. It's like one gives direction, one gives the fuel. One without the other isn't much good. And the lover reminds me to feel. Rather than being devoid of emotion, it reminds me that there is so much beauty in the emotion. I'm still learning as much as I can about the magician and the lover. I'm learning what I can about all of them and how I can use it to help other people. I think that's going to become a core of the things I teach. For a while now, I've talked about mature masculinity. And the way I always described it was there's masculine energy and feminine energy, and there's immature and mature for both of them. And I remember hearing this term a while ago, but I've also heard them described as light and dark. And I haven't learned as much on that, but I have learned that a part of those masculine and feminine energies are the archetypes. And a part of each of those archetypes, there's also shadow variance, which is someone who's not fully tapped into their king, their magician, their warrior, their lover, and the types of people they could become and how they treat others. There's a lot of different distinctions, and I'm learning all of them, and I don't know how I'm going to synthesize it all, because even this last blurb may have made your eyes glaze over. And as we all know, complexity is the enemy of execution. Simplicity is key. I need to simplify all of this and make it easy to understand for everyone. What do you need to be in your masculinity? What do you need to be in your femininity? What do you need to be who you are? You know, that's not a terrible question to end off on. As we both carry on the day today, I hope you really think about, what is it that you need in order to feel like yourself? What do you need to feel like the full you? Take that into the day and leave it in the back of your mind. And enjoy that you are exactly where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be, as you're supposed to be. You're not supposed to be any other way. And if you are ready for change, now is the time. It wasn't meant to be hours ago, days ago, weeks ago. It's meant to be right now. So keep going. Do what you have to do to feel like the full you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I love you.